friends, welcome to Red Eyes Radio. Thank you very much for stopping by and joining us here for some Internet Talk Radio. My name is Henrik Palmgren. If you are a regular listener to this program and our website, you know what we're about and what we're doing here. If not, if you're new to the program, please go to our website, redicecreations.com. That's REDICE creations.com. From there, you can find much more information about what we do, our radio program, our members area, and of course, follow along in our news section. And today we have David Halpin with us on the line. He is a retired orthopedic surgeon, and he has, together with his wife, Sue, been fighting for the freedom of the Palestinian people for years. They're behind an organization called the Dove and the Dolphin. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. They've been doing everything from delivering supplies to food and medical equipment to the people of Palestine. And we have many different areas to go into here today. We might even go into the case of Dr. Kelly as well, actually, the murder of Dr. Kelly, and get David's take on that. I also want to mention that David was along on the Dignity, a boat that was rammed actually by an Israeli gunboat back in December 2008, and this is something I want to hear more about and to try to find out what actually happened there and what that was all about, so to speak. I also want to mention that David will be speaking at the Alternative View 2 conference in London. As you probably know, if you've been listening to some of our latest shows, we have done interviews with a lot of the speakers there. And if you're interested in attending the conference, simply go to avii.co.uk or thealternativeview.co.uk for more information on dates, tickets, accommodation, and of course more information about all the speakers there. We're going to be there, and hopefully we'll get to see you there as well. And in regards to David's website, we can give out two of those here right away. We have probably more that we can link up later on redicecreations.com as well. But for now, check out halpin.infoaction.org.uk or doveanddolphin.co.uk. That will get you a little bit of information on David, and if you want to follow along here at the beginning of our program. But with that, welcome very much to the program, David. Thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thank you for asking me, Henrik.
It's great to have you here, and we have so much to talk about today. We have about an hour, so let's dive into it right away, David. I want to hear a little bit about your background, primarily then in terms of your activism for the people of Palestine. What got you started? What got you fired up, so to speak, in regards to this issue, David?
Well, I grew up in a family, Henrik, which was skeptical, and a family, too, which was concerned for people being kicked about, the underdog. And so I was always alert to injustice, I think, without sounding too holy. I was the eldest of four, and I watched my mother nurturing my two younger brothers, the two youngest. And she was a gentle person, and I think that my love of babies and my concern for my love of humanity, really, came a lot from my mother. When I was a surgeon, orthopedic and trauma surgeon, I was too busy, really, to apply myself in a immediate way to political events, but I was aware of them. But I look back with shame on my inaction during the Vietnam War. My only excuse is I was doing my best for patients. But what really got me going about Palestine, I knew about Palestine, a fair amount. I had a young senior house officer operating one day with me, who was from Palestine. And he said, "Do you know what they're doing to us in Palestine, Mr. Halpin?" I said, "I've got a fair idea, Abu Lafi." He says, "You have no idea." And I went no further into it then, but he gave me the message. That was quite a long time ago. And then then they invaded Afghanistan. The Judeo-Christian alliance, led by the US and Britain. And then they started bombing the poorest people on earth from 32,000 feet by B-52 bombers. And I was outraged. And I knew that Palestine was at the hinge of our humanity. So that's what galvanized me was the bombing of the folk in Afghanistan. Some people might think it was a rather remote connection, but it isn't. And from that time on, which was in the middle of 2002, I started to act for Palestine. I went to a big meeting in London, good meeting, all-day meeting with people speaking about Palestine, mostly academics. And I heard of doctors being stopped at the Israeli lines who were carrying drugs through to for Palestinian children. Being stopped and turned around. And again, my feeling was of great outrage. And I thought immediately then, what I should do is take a boat so big that it would have publicity attaching to it, which would make it safe and also would make it successful. That was in November 2002, and I announced a voyage of the Dove and the Dolphin on the 3rd of January 2003, and exactly 28 days later, I'm always proud of this, we set sail with a Danish, we steamed off from the Torquay, little quay there, to Ashdod in Israel with about 50 tons of symbolic gifts, mostly good food for the Palestinian people. And that's how it started. And from that time on, we've continued to embrace our Palestinian sisters and brothers. It's difficult. And as I always say, charity is no answer, but justice is. So always in the background, not in the background, in the foreground, I act politically as well. But the charity we run in a proper manner, but we're finding that much more difficult because of the difficulty of getting in. I need to go in the next few months with one of our trustees who is Anglo-Palestinian, marvellous chap, and we need to go, but I know that we will have difficulty getting into Gaza, which is where we focus our efforts.
Yes.
So that in a nutshell, Henrik, is what got me going, what we've been doing.
Very, very good. And are you frequently trying to get back there as often as you can, or has this been a limited number of times that you've been able to go down to Palestine and visit the people there?
I've been 9 times. I can't. Some of it's pretty. Some of the experiences, and there's always delays and phone calls. It's a very difficult exercise. And almost every time I've been there, they've been shelling Gaza or doing something. In March last year, I went with Sue. It was her first time to Gaza. We were delayed 3 days going into Gaza because they were using thermobaric missiles or shells. I forget now what they were using. But they killed about 130, including 56 children, over 3 days around March the 1st. So there's always chaos, there's always killing, there's always weeping. So that's the background. It's not like going to, say, visit Malawi, say, on the charitable exercise. But I went back. I was going to go for the 10th time, as you mentioned in your introduction, on the Dignity, the Free Gaza organization boat, which was put forward in its sailing to the 29th of December. And that was, as you say, rammed. We can deal with that later, perhaps. That will be my 10th visit to Gaza. I don't look forward to going, to quite blunt, again because of the increasing delays.
Yes. And
that's, of course, intended. That's what they plan.
Yes.
They want it to be difficult. They want to isolate them completely.
Of course. And just remember putting up an article just about 2 days ago here from May 2nd. Yet again here, Israeli tanks and bulldozers roll into Gaza. So, I mean, this is an ongoing process. It's all the time. We hear about this in the news all the time in that sense that it's trouble in the region. And I want to try to get a little bit to the heart of the matter, and I understand how huge of a question this is and how big this is. People have been dealing with this, for well ever since Israel was set up as a state back in was it 48 or 46 or something like that? And 48, yes. But if you can, and if you want to, maybe you can just sum it up for us a little bit. What you think about what's going on, what the purpose of this is, and how. I guess what if you at this point have some kind of idea about what can be done about the situation? Can this ever be solved in some sense? What can be done here, so to speak?
Well, it must be solved. When I speak to groups, I sometimes say that the people of good heart, when they see something which is knotted up, which is raveled like a ball of wool, The inclination is to unravel it. But what we have in this part of the Middle East, and it was all intended, it was all planned, is something which is so tightly knotted that it would be very, very difficult to unravel it. But we must. And one of the first duties of people outside of Palestine, the Palestinians, have been abused beyond imagination. And one of the biggest abuses, of course, was what they call the Al-Nakba, where 80% almost of their population, both Christians and Muslims, were driven by terror and by force of arms from their homes and their land and their living. It was a genocidal act. There has been no reparation. There was, you probably know this, Henry, there was a United Nations General Assembly.
Yes.
A resolution in late 1948, Resolution 194, then that directed that the people should return to their lands and their homes if they wish to live at peace with their neighbours. Rather haughty direction. But that has never been. It has never happened. It's part of the unlawful basis of what I prefer to call not the Israeli state, but the Zionist entity.
Yes.
It is an entity, it's not a state. States don't behave by enlarging their boundaries relentlessly as the entity does, day by day. And it doesn't, in fact, shoot high-velocity bullets at fishermen who are trying to eke a living by catching sardines and other fish close by the shore of Gaza on a daily basis, the same gunboats which rammed our boat. It is an extraordinary setup, the most grotesque illegality and inhumanity tolerated day by day by a vast coalition of the Western nations, including, I should add, Canada, Australia, and now New Zealand. It is disgusting, and I find it saps my energy somewhat. We're not giving up, but our first duty is to be solid with the people who are oppressed and treated so unjustly. And that becomes, before everything else, before writing, what have you, is to be with them if possible. But as I said earlier, that is becoming more difficult because of the very tight control of the borders.
When you mention the Zionist faction here, what do you think is important to them? Is it the region? Is it about just getting rid of the people of Palestine? Or is it something else? Do you think that this actually goes into a question of theology or religion in that sense? Well,
theology is a bit of it, but as you know, Theodor Herzl was in fact an atheist, the fellow who led the Zionist movement in the late part of the 19th century. And quite a few of them are atheists. And this is why some, like Nechurai Carter, that's rabbinical sect, I would call it, but they have they oppose Zionism completely, so it's in fact evil, really. But we won't rely too much on that. It's a combination of things. It's partly colonialism. Some people say it's the last sort of spasm of colonialism.
Yes.
Well, it isn't really. But it is, it's a political ideology. It's also a religious ideology, but I would say it's mostly political. And it's based on this idea that this is the promised land for chosen people. So it's based on an exclusivism. That's an illogism. It depends on people having an exclusive view of their place in the world, and it's a very asphyxiating view. It is certainly an unlawful view because the sad thing, the fact is that Aboriginal Jews who'd been there since before the time of Christ, had lived with Muslim religion, as you know, started 1600s,
yes.
And that overtook large